Welcome guys, welcome back to Filmmaking Times show, and today we got an interesting topic. Going to be talking about different camera requirements, or kind of I guess what, not just camera, just in general gear that professionals rely on and why that's necessary, and also when it's not 100% necessary. So we'll talk about all those topics and also take your suggestions for any gear that maybe you guys are thinking. I got my brother here, Lucas.
Hi everyone.
And he's going to be taking your questions, moderating, and also joining in on the conversation. So, let's start off here. Maybe first thing I'm guessing most people are interested in is when it comes to cameras, right? What kind of, are there any sort of requirements when it comes to, like, if you want to do professional broadcast quality work? And I'll tell you this, a few years ago, or I should say, before HD, even when HD kind of first came around, there were these standards that I would say that a lot of companies required. Like, let's say if you work for a television station or you were doing, whether you're doing live television broadcast work, then definitely there were requirements. And I would say for that there still is. But when it came, for example, even for delivering, let's see, whether it was a commercial, or I remember like back in the day when I did music videos and had to deliver it, and it was, whether it's just even the how you deliver it, it was, beta or digibeta, tapes and all that stuff. All those things kind of mattered. And I would say now it matters less and less. And I think we're going to see it maybe get to a point where it's just, basically there won't be any requirements. But there are still certain companies. I would say the difference now between now and maybe what it was like 10 years ago is that before there was sort of like a standard. And I know, like, for example, EBU, for example, which is the European Broadcasting Union, they still sort of have this kind of a standard. You can check their documentation, and they divide the cameras in different tiers. But even they kind of admit pretty much at the end of the whole paper that that there is no standard. That, like, there's also, they have these category for cameras they call SP, I think it is, just special case, where literally they'll accept videos from from a little GoPro camera, from DSLR, whatever. At the end of the day, it comes down to content. So if you have good content, so whether you're, let's say, producing a TV spot or music video or maybe a film you're doing, at the end of the day, if you have good content, people are gonna let the people who want to show that content, different TV stations or distributors for cinema and stuff like that, they're gonna accept your work. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day what it's shot in. But if you want to kind of minimize, let's say, the possibilities of creating some problems, and also just even so it makes it easier for you as you're working, there are certain things you kind of want to stick to, and that's why there's sort of this, I would say, this difference between the kind of pro gear versus the kind of consumer gear, and those are some of the things, I guess, that I wanted to talk about today. And we are also going to get to your submissions. Been getting a lot of good submissions, so we'll get to as many as we can. And next week we might even just do a whole show then about submissions, because supposedly there's been a lot of good submissions. I've seen one I know for sure I've seen, but there's been a few new ones that my brother sent my way, and I just didn't have time to see them. So I'll be just as surprised as you guys are. So kind of talking about I guess the requirements. So first thing I would say is when it comes to cameras, right now. And again, it depends on who you look at. For example, like, we did a show once talking about the Netflix requirements, and Netflix is very specific. They have literally a list of cameras that they approve. So it doesn't mean that you can't shoot something on basically one of the cameras that's not on their list and sell it to them. But if you're doing work where you're actually hired, or commissioned by them to do, then you have to meet those requirements. So they have literally a specific list of cameras. But I would say in general, most distributors, most buyers now want UHD at least, or 4K, 16:9 resolution, because the cinema 4K and UHD is slightly different. It's a little bit, I guess the cinema 4K is a little bit wider, a little bit more pixel information. But that's the first requirement. The people do want, most companies want 4K, and the reason is, even if not all of them are going to be broadcasting it or showing it right now in 4K, they want to be future proof. And I think most of the bigger companies now they are already broadcasting in 4K. So that's the first requirement. Now you might say, well, there's a lot of 4K cameras out there, right? There's like pretty much any, I would say, DSLR or DSLM camera these days, or most of them, shoot 4K video. But most of those cameras will still not qualify because of some of the other very important things. Another thing I would say that it's very important to look at right now is the kind of codec, or at the end of the day, the kind of image quality a camera can deliver. I'm not talking about the sensor. You might have a great looking sensor that can capture a lot of nice colors, all that stuff. But once that information comes off the sensor and actually gets compressed into an actual video file, what format is that in? A lot of DSLRs, DSLM type of cameras, like I know a lot of people, and I myself like using, for example, the Sony A7S2, A6300 or 6500. They're great cameras, but they record in basically what's a codec that's really meant for distribution, not really acquisition. And what I mean by that is that it's a codec that's already heavily compressed, and it has a limited number of of data and color information. It's going to look good when you just watch it on a nice screen, but once you start taking that footage and manipulating it, then, especially when you're doing color grading or any of that kind of stuff, and then you recompress it again, then it's really going to lose a lot of quality. A lot of those colors are going to be either, because you say, compressed or completely gotten rid of, and because of that, it's just there's not enough shades basically of each color and things like that. And so the first thing I would say is a camera that can shoot. Right now, again, there's no standard, so you can get into debates, and you guys can let me know, and I'm going to get through some of these comments, but. You can basically I would say, according to me, this is right now, and this is kind of what EV kind of agrees with, and a lot of companies like Netflix, for example, is that you pretty much are going to go like the safe way if you want to produce something is to shoot in RAW. It's not obviously something you're going to be doing when you're doing live broadcast work, but at least when you're doing something, you're going to have deliverables, and you're actually going to deliver these certain files. If you can deliver RAW files, or the final project might not be in actual RAW files, but you have the originals as a RAW file, and the final will be at least, I would say, a 10-bit compressed codec that's not, let's say like something like H.264 compression, because again, that's not really for acquisition or even for deliverables. But something like intra-frame basically codecs, or Apple ProRes, for example, is a great way, or the Avid codecs, which is the DNX HR. And so that's kind of the codecs that you want. So these are codecs that they still compress, but they're not really destructive, or not in a way that's really noticeable. They have 10 bits of color minimum, although there are some now, companies that start requiring 12-bit because of the whole HDR thing that we're getting into slowly. So I would say at least 10-bit, and then when it comes to the color space, just 422, none of that 420. Which is unfortunately what pretty much every DSLR, DSLM type of camera is going to deliver out there. So you need at least 422, but like I said, and the higher the better, obviously. So for Netflix, I know, and some of the other companies, they will require that it's 444 12-bit, let's say Apple ProRes or whatever, final deliverable with the original 4K RAW files. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now in the thing, and this stuff is constantly changing. Like I said, the HDR is now being more and more adapted. It's kind of more, I would say, for virtual reality and gaming content side of things. But there is now more and more, like there's going to be more live events that are going to be broadcast with HDR. So basically, it just means the higher dynamic range. So because of that, again, the color space is different, and you need definitely bigger, depth of the colors basically that you're recording, or the shades. So yeah, like I said, minimum. And so because of that, even if you have a camera that doesn't record in RAW, there's many other great cameras out there. But I would say then the second sort of the minimum, and that's more for television work. For television work, you kind of want to make sure that you have at least a camera that can record in 422 again, 10-bit, and then like an intra, basically codec. So no H.264 or things like that, and none of those internet basically distribution codecs. So that's the kind of camera. So when it comes to that, I would say the first camera that comes to my mind, and maybe you guys can let me know which camera you think would fit this, and it's like the best deal. I right now think, and it's simply because I had experience with that camera, and it's an older camera, but it's still very I would say, again, reliable, it's been proven on a lot of great productions, is the Sony Fs7. I think the Sony Fs7, best bang for the buck if you want that kind of a camera that's good for kind of ENG, kind of live broadcast work. You can send out timecode, you can send out, like I said, the signal over SD, for example, SDI cables, and that's again something that, like, I did a review recently of a monitor from Icon, and there were some comments in there, and people were kind of discussing about whether you really need the whole SDI, what's the difference between the professional monitor and everything. And really, I mean, there's a lot of great monitors out there, but if you want a monitor that's really going to be considered by most professionals, like something that they can use, you have to have SDI in and out connections, because SDI is just, there's a lot of advantages, for example, to having that. And again, when it comes to cameras, then you're going to be looking at cameras that have that SDI in and out connectivity, which again, no DSLR, DSLM type of cameras will have. So those are very important things. And why is, like, just again to kind of, I guess, get back to that discussion that was on the monitor video I did. Here's a little, like a, monitor slash EVF that I use on one of my cameras. And anyways, it has SDI connections. So use a little short SDI cable, you can see. And the difference with this cable versus, for example, HDMI is that it's a lot more reliable. Like I said, the quality usually of these cables is like they last you longer than an HDMI cable. But the big thing is just the plugs. The plugs have like a locking system. So like you see, once I have it in here, and it's easy to take it on and off if you unlock it. So I put it in here, I twist it, lock it, and once it's in there, doesn't matter how much you pull it, it's not coming detached. And that's something that you need to have when, let's say, you're running with a Sony Fs7 or something like that, like a broadcast camera, and you're sending the signal live, let's say, to to the, let's say, local camera track where you're feeding the signal live to a TV station or broadcasting it right away. You need to make sure that this connection never gets detached, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much fancy broadcasting equipment you have. If your cable basically just kind of jiggles in there or just gets pulled out and detaches, then your whole production goes off air. So you got to make sure that this is like the single point of entry, I would say, and where the failure can happen in a broadcast situation. And so it's gotta be really foolproof. Another thing with SDI cables is you're gonna be able to send, first of all, more data than HDMI currently, but also you're sending, for example, timecode you can send with it, not just video signal. There's actually other information you can send. Plus, you can send this stuff for much longer distances, because this basically the signal will carry over a much longer cable. Whereas HDMI, I don't know what's the limit now, but I think it's like 20 feet pretty much, and after that, it's already 20 feet. I think it's pretty bad, but anything over, I think, 20 feet, as far as what I've heard, I've never even ran a HDMI cable that far, but past 20 feet, from what I've heard from other, basically friends of mine, it's pretty much the signal just dies on you. So that's, again, that's the reason why HDMI is not reliable. Not to mention that it doesn't carry a timecode, and it's just flimsy. I mean, you can pull out, but you can basically fall out of your camera's jack very easily. But also, it's very easy, prone to breakage. Like if you bend the cable a little bit too much, the actual plug will get damaged. SDI or good SDI cables won't have that problem. So that's like another thing, is you want to make sure that your whether it's your wireless video transmitters or like any gear really that you're gonna be sending video signals through, or your cameras, you have to have that SDI connection. Timecode is another thing, like I mentioned, is something that's again pretty much a necessity, whether you're doing film work. Let's say you're working on a film camera, and again, kind of going back to I would say the first point I was talking about, quality. When it comes to shooting films these days, doesn't mean you can't shoot a film on a small little point-and-shoot camera or DSLR or on an iPhone even. But really, if you want to have like something that's reliable, you again want a camera that shoots in RAW, because in film you have the luxury later on in post to play around with the colors and really, kind of tweak your shot. So shooting in RAW. But the next thing is, there are cameras out there that will allow you to shoot RAW, or even where you can get a hack and kind of hack your camera and kind of shoot, sort of a semi-RAW, quality of image, but then you do not have those professional connections. First one being is the SDI. So again, SDI connectivity is very important in cameras for some of the reasons that I talked about, but also, like I said, for timecode. Another thing is you need a camera which has timecode in there. where basically you can either, sometimes you even send out timecode, or you can feed timecode into your camera, and you can this way kind of have uniform timecode. So this is important whether you're shooting films, and let's say you have 2 or 3 cameras on set, or especially when you're doing live broadcast work where you need to have all cameras, like a multicam for example, shoot multiple cameras and they have to be perfectly synced. The way you're going to be doing it is by making sure all cameras have identical timecode running through them. So that's another thing. Timecode is also very helpful on the sound side of things. So if you're looking for sound gear, there's a lot of these great little affordable recorders you can get these days, like the Zoom H1 or H5, H6. But really, once you start going into the professional line of audio recorders, they might have a lot of other features that maybe are not always necessary, but the one thing they'll have is timecode. So, and again, because you want the cameras, the audio, everything to be on the same timecode. So this way, let's say whether you're feeding it at live, let's say to a track and you're broadcasting it or something, or in a TV studio, or whether you're going to be editing it in post, it just makes it so much easier and more reliable, where you can just put it all in there and sync it all according to basically on your timeline, according to the timecode. So that's another really important thing. I would say some of the other things are, for example, like batteries, for example. There's a difference between the cameras that will kind of accept these pro kind of, like Anton Bauer, the gold mount, for example, batteries, or Anton Bauer also makes, for example, the V-mount batteries, but like something like that, like V-mount or Anton Bauer connections kind of type of batteries. Those are, like, I would say, the 2 big sort of standards right now. And those are batteries that are usually going to be more expensive, bigger, and all that stuff, but they also, there all those things for a reason, and the reason is because you're again, you want reliability. That's really what you want when you're going for kind of a professional equipment, right? When it comes to, for example, like the cameras, I would say, like, again, for television, maybe again you guys can tell me your suggestions. I think the best option right now, like the kind of best bang for your buck, and that also is going to just deliver all the things that I talked about, is Sony Fs7. Records 10-bit, 444, I even believe, with and it can even do RAW even with the upgrade. So that's a great thing. Has timecode in, out, all those things. So it has it, 4K you can record. On the cinema line of things, though, I would say the Ursa Mini Pro or 4.6K, really both of those cameras are going to work, and it's actually one of the cameras that Netflix approves as their official, like on their list of official cameras, and it's the most affordable. Like you can get it from $5,000 to $6,000 depending on which option you go for. And again, it's a camera that shoots in RAW and all these things. It's a camera actually that right now I'm using for broadcasting. That's what you're watching me on. So definitely, there's, like I said, there's some affordable options right now. And I would say, I would say at the end of the day, if you could only get one camera, but you want a camera that, again, is something that you can use it for work. Let's say if you're working with Netflix or some big distributor, that, let's say, you shoot a feature film on, or you're doing live broadcast, whether it's on internet or television or that kind of stuff. Again, I would say the Ursa Mini 4.6K or Pro, either one of those, I think is the best option right now. But it might not be as good when you're like running and gunning, kind of doing documentary style, as, let's say, a Sony Fs7. Because of certain things, like, for example, battery life, the media, for example, there's some maybe better options when it comes to Sony Fs7, little things like that. But I would say the biggest thing is just the camera build and the fact that you have all these, kind of easier menu and buttons to kind of get through on the Sony Fs7 side. Also, although this Ursa Mini Pro is pretty good now. I know some people, there's certain things that are not perfect on it, but it's pretty good. So I would say those are like the 2 cameras that's like the best right now option. But anyways, let me know what you guys think. Which camera you think is good, or which camera maybe you're wondering if I would say is like a safe camera to go for if you're looking to get into doing some, like actual professional work, where you want to make sure that the stuff is going to be accepted. So the sound I kind of talked about, making sure you have the time code. Another thing I think when you're looking in terms of sound, and again those bigger, more professional sound recorders are going to have things like, for example, provide phantom power, because that's something, again, that's very something that you really need, because a lot of the professional microphones are going to be microphones that require phantom power. And that's also why I would say also a camera, when it comes to camera, there's some great cameras out there that have a lot of great options, but they don't have really good pro audio connectivity. And again, that's the reason why I like the Sony Fs7, and there are so many Pro 4.6K, because they support, they have dual connections for XLR, actual like full size connectivity of microphones, and they can supply phantom power. So if you wanted to, you can literally record directly into those cameras or feed sound through them. So that's one of the things. But I would say if you're just going to look at a sound recorder on the side or sound device, yeah, you want to make sure you have phantom power so you can connect those pro mics. You can do multi-track, because usually you're gonna have multiple, especially in a film shoot, you're gonna have multiple microphones set up sort of as a backup, and also so that you can kind of get best quality audio from different angles. So that later on in editing, the sound editor can actually best pick which basically channel, which mic sounds the best, or mix between the two. So that's another thing. Also, a lot of the professional audio recorders are gonna have safety features built in, or for example, you're recording at different gains to multiple tracks, which again makes sure that, like, let's say if suddenly the audio peaks and it goes way above a certain level, or it goes too low also, then you're not getting audio that's like just completely past its peak point and it's just hurting your ears, or something that's so low that all you're hearing is pretty much noise. So you kind of have these multiple features where you can record from the same mic on multiple tracks at different volume levels, basically, or gain settings. So that's another really important thing when it comes to audio gear. And again, it's something that most cameras or just simple audio recorders will not allow you to do. So that's one thing. When it comes to lights, for example, you definitely, you can shoot a film using, and I've done a lot of these tutorials on my channel showing how you can get amazing professional results just using hardware lights, right? Pretty much anything. And at the end of the day, you can go outside and just use the natural light, right? And during the day is the easiest. You have the sound there. But I would say when you're looking into expanding or building your lighting gear kit, if you want something, again, is going to be something that's kind of what's going to work for in the future on more kind of professional jobs. Definitely want gear that's reliable. I mean, again, it doesn't matter whether it's camera or other types of gear, but lights, the same thing. Reliability is very important. So lights that will not break very easily, just sturdy material, well built, all that stuff. Also, lights that are they give you basically repeatable results, or something you can always rely on. So lights that will, for example, deliver kind of a certain color, I would say, at least range, and it will not shift on you. Now, lights that have higher CRI rating, or there's actually other ways of measuring basically color accuracy, those are also lights that's something that you're looking for, because again, you don't want lights that at certain settings, basically, or certain dimmability, they suddenly start introducing, let's say, a big spike in the green channel or things like that. So those are things you want to be aware of. Also, lights that are, when it comes to frequency, you want lights that are I would say again, frequencies that are going to work with most cameras, because every light, at the end of the day, lights flicker, right? Electricity runs through it, and they flicker, and so with your eye you might not notice them, but when you're looking through your camera, because your camera also records at a certain frequency, if those frequencies don't align between the camera and the lights, then you're going to start seeing either flickering in your shot, or like literally lines if you have CMOS even, or not CMOS, but rolling shutter kind of sensors. You can see these lines literally going through the screen. So you want to make sure that you have lights that are usually, the higher the frequency the better, but also just frequencies that are going to be more compatible with most cameras. So and also so that, like, if it's higher frequencies, that you can shoot at or basically higher frame rates, then lights that are, again, higher frequencies are going to allow you to do that. So if you're shooting slow motion, I'm sure, like, a lot of people now, like, you can, on your smartphones, you can record slow motion, and a lot of people then record this stuff that's like, just out in the street or in their house, and suddenly they notice that a lot of the lights in their video flicker, or just the video itself flickers. And again, that's because of the those lights in your household. A lot of them, they look good to your eyes, but they don't really look good when you're recording at really high frame rates. So for professional work, again, you want lights that are not going to introduce those kind of problems. So that's really what it really comes down to. Is, I would say, at the end of the day, equipment that's reliable is going to give you consistent results. And then because of that, again, it's gonna cost more money, because those are things that not everybody cares. So because it's a smaller market, again, the prices are not always high because they have to be that high. It's just, I guess, the manufacturers have to, maybe they're producing those cameras more, those lights or whatever might be really affordable, but the R&D and all that stuff, developing stage, they have to cover those costs. So because of that gear usually will cost more money. Doesn't mean you have to buy stuff and spend thousands or or even $100,000 on all this professional gear. No, and I would even say, as a filmmaker, as a beginner, you probably want to invest in stuff that's more like this consumer level. So even if you have to, get little, like hardware lights or things like that, get a little, mirrorless camera, get, again, a tiny little recorder, that you can record on, like that just records one channel. Something that you can already produce good work, even though you're going to have to sometimes, maybe work around those reliability issues and things like that. But if you're working on small productions, nobody cares. But then when you get an opportunity, like with that work that you've produced with this more consumer, like I said, gear that you've invested into, once that work puts you out there and you start getting hired for bigger jobs, I'll tell you that very quickly, just because you're going to be working with higher budgets, you're just going to be able to rent all that stuff. And a lot of the stuff, it doesn't even make sense to buy it. Just rent it, per job, and just use it like that. So that's why I'm kind of saying that, like, just because this gear is expensive doesn't mean that you have to go and buy it and spend all this money. It might unless you're like really working, busy, crazy, doing these big productions every day. Most of the time, it makes financially a bit more sense to just rent stuff. So, but that's kind of more or less, yeah. I don't know, Lucas, you want to join in on this?
Well, I have one question, and then we'll get to the questions from our viewers. But how would those requirements, for the gear, how would they be? Would they be any different if you're looking to do live broadcasting, live streaming? You would still looking at the same things you need, or I mean, for example, there's the Ursa Mini 4.6, but there's also a studio version. Like, how are they different? Why is one better for studio work, for live streaming than the other?
Which cameras? Sorry.
Isn't there like a version of the Ursa Mini that's a studio version?
Yeah. There's
so, for example, I thought about that case, but in general, like, is there much of a difference? Like, if you're looking to, let's say, do live streaming on YouTube, Facebook is becoming really popular right now. So, somebody who's looking to get into that, the gear that they look at, the camera and everything else, like, would it change anything? Would anything change?
If you're doing live streaming on the internet, that's kind of disrupting a lot of things. And what I mean by that is that it's literally becoming to a point where, you can use a webcam. And I mean, there's many people who do amazing live shows that just use a webcam. Just because I use the Ursa Mini here, doesn't mean that's what you have to use. Literally, I could be using a webcam right now. And I'm actually I recorded a video about kind of my whole setup, so you guys will be able to see kind of what I use and why, but I also show you kind of what I started out with and what literally you can start out with. And the basic and the most simple, I'll just tell you right now, is use the webcam in your laptop or get a little external webcam, or even on your phone, like literally, and then that's it. Just start streaming straight with that. The reliability or basically the reason why even if you're doing online streaming is why you don't have to, but why you might want to invest into actual like these professional cameras or cameras that are meant for broadcasting. Like, for example, like Blackmagic actually has a really good option now of these mini, basically, production cameras that are great for streaming or live, television work, because they have some of these features, but maybe they're not some of, like for example, they have things like the good connectivity, SDI, and things like that. But at the same time, that might be very good for going out there and actually shooting on locations with them. So those are more cameras that are kind of produced that are very good just for live broadcast kind of setting. If you want a camera that can do both, that's one of the reasons, again, why I recommend the Ursa Mini Pro or 4.6K, because these cameras, as you can see right now, they can definitely deliver quality when you're just using it for broadcast. But at the same time, you can use them for, and when I do film work and things like that. So, or even if I did television work, I mean, you can use it for all those uses. That's the reason why that camera, it just has more usability, more applications that you can use it in. So that's one of the, I would say, the reasons. It's when it comes to the online stuff, you can definitely, it kind of breaks the rules. And I would also say, because of the internet, because now most of the stuff we consume, even when it comes to feature films and stuff like that, a lot of times people watch a movie, even though I personally hate it, but like I'll talk to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, I watched this really good movie and this and that, and they just watch it on their phone. So for me, I still want to have it like on a big screen and nice stereo systems, so I kind of get the full experience, if I can go to the cinema. But there's many people who don't care, don't think. So because of the fact that content is getting consumed that way, that simply means that it's going to be a lot easier now for, like I said, and why distributors now are willing to accept work that was shot on gear that wasn't necessarily thing. But at the end of the day, if you want to kind of cover all your bases, you want to make sure that if you're producing something that you're hoping to sell to distributors, that you produce something. Obviously, story and the content is king. That's the number one. If that's great or amazing, and your camera, gear wasn't all the way up to par, a lot of distributors were willing to look past it. But if, let's say, they get 2 submissions, let's say, and they can only acquire 1 film, and both of them have a great story, but one is just shot on better camera, then basically you can deliver better deliverable material to them, then the distributor might pass on your film. So if you want to kind of cover your bases and make sure, that I have this great story on all this stuff, so I want to make sure that I'm not kind of running into any problems with distribution, then you want to be able to shoot on those kind of professional formats and using professional gear. But if you're just doing a production where literally you're live streaming yourself, then you're not reliant on any distributor or any other kind of a third company to kind of stopping you from doing it. So then you can use your webcam, right? So that's where, for live streaming at least, is it makes a big difference. And
here a question from Edwin Williams. What's a great SDI brand, and what's the difference or disadvantage of 6-pin versus 12-pin cables?
SDI, I don't know if there's any 6-pin or 12-pin. At least I'm not aware of it. There's only just 1 pin inside the actual cable. But when it comes to brand, the one I've been using, I don't know if it's the best, but it's the most, from the ones that I've used, the most reliable. And like here in the studio, I have a lot of their cables, is Gear from B&H. I always get them. And they actually make good cables. One thing I would say is that, they're good because I'm saying, for what they deliver in terms of reliability and all that stuff, but also how much it costs. There are other companies that will basically produce how should I say it? Basically cables that have some other, they're, at the end of the day, they're just SDI cables, but they're gonna have other things. Like, for example, when it comes to my gimbal work, I forgot the name of the company now, but there's this company that makes these really nice, super thin, like they still are SDI cables and they have the full plug and everything, but the cable itself is very thin and very flexible, and that makes it really good for gimbal work. So that's where, sometimes you might want to look into other companies. I forgot the name of the one that I got, but I only got one of those cables because it was super freaking expensive. I think the cable was 3 feet and it was like over $100. So whereas the Gear stuff, I mean, a cable that size, you'll pay $4 or $5 even. You can find, especially just look for deals. But on B&H they have a lot of good deals. But like the most I've paid is like $30 for a cable, like the longer ones that I needed. So.
Okay, here's a question about like two different people, but regarding 2 cameras, how they fit into in terms of the how they meet the requirements for broadcasting. And so from Galaxy Studios, we have a question regarding how does the Panasonic EVA-1, how is it going to fit, compared to the current lineup?
Okay.
And also for in terms of for broadcast cameras, right? And also how is Red compared to other cameras on the market?
Red is it's kind of a weird camera in terms of because basically the Red camera is for sure delivers amazing quality, has timecode and all that stuff. So for film work, it's gonna work. Where the issue might be is where if you're trying, and that's, as far as I know, at least I haven't seen anybody really try to use RAW for like in studio camera work or like live broadcast basically, or television work, because that's not really designed for that. It's a good cinema camera, but it has horrible, for example, when it comes to the audio connectivity. I mean, it's just horrible. The options and stuff, you can kind of go around it by adding a lot of these other things, but even then it's not a great, there's no great way to get really good audio in and out of that camera, and that's one of the reasons why basically why it's not good for that. Also, when you want to kind of fine-tune the kind of look, because it shoots in RAW and it's great for that, but it's not as easy as even working with the Ursa, where you can kind of create your custom LUTs, load them in there, and you can think. So it's kind of because of that, because basically when you're doing live broadcast work, you don't want to be sending out a RAW signal that's like very log looking, very flat and lacking contrast and color. So because of that, I would say it's not a camera for that. They're amazing cameras, but just more for film work. When it comes to Panasonic EVA-1, it's for film work, I mean, it can be used. It's 10-bit, 4:2, and so for television, definitely it has, it seems like it has a lot of nice connectivity and all that stuff. But I haven't worked with that camera yet. I haven't even held it in my hands, so I can't really tell you guys. How is it really going to be used, like in an ENG kind of style of work? And let me actually look right now at some of the specs here of the camera, so maybe you guys can look with me. So here we have it. It's the Panasonic EVA. It's still not available. I don't know where they said that it was going to be actually available, but as you can see, it's still not available. And let's look at it up here. So what it has SDI. It says so. It has SDI 3G, 6G SDI. Okay, so it has all that stuff. 4:2. It's 4K and then Cinema 4K and UHD, which is very important if you're doing broadcast work. And you have it at the standard broadcast frame rates, which is 25 for Europe and 30 or 29.97 for North America. So you have that. You have HDMI out. So I mean, it's a pretty good option. But again, considering how much it costs, I mean, again, it might be great. I'm not saying that it's not just as good or maybe better than the Sony Fs7, but at the same time, I'm just saying that I haven't had personal experience with it, so that's why it's kind of hard for me to recommend, and that's why on this channel, whenever I recommend something, it's because I've actually used it, and actually like literally used it in an actual, whether it's even doing extensive testing or a job. Whereas I haven't used this camera, so it's hard for me to kind of recommend it. It looks very good, looks very interesting. If I have a chance to work with it, I'll let you guys know. But the Sony Fs7, I've worked with it. There's a lot of already accessories for it and all that stuff, and it's kind of a tried and tested camera. So that's what I'm saying. It's like a great option. As far as I know, it's kind of they're priced more or less the same. So, that's really the only reason why. Now, another camera is the Canon C200. People are wondering about. So I mean, if you want, I can actually look at that right now too. We have it here, and where is it? I know it records the Canon Light, RAW codec. You can see that up here. But the problem I would say for me is, like I said, RAW is great if you're doing film work. But for a lot of the stuff where you're going to be doing deliverables directly, let's say to a television station, recording some spot, let's say on the streets, and you need to send it to an editor and have it out within an hour, you definitely don't want to be shooting RAW. At the same time, the only other codec it records in is MP4s, and again, that's H.264 compression. It's not something you want to be recording in. So again, that's kind of my worry about this camera, is that it might be great for shooting RAW. Now again, what's the big difference between Canon, just a regular RAW, which is a great codec, and light RAW? I don't know exactly right now, but it has 4K, so that it has timecode. I don't know if it accepts timecode. That's another thing that you gotta, you want to be kind of aware of. And with the EVA, actually, I didn't even check if it allows timecode in and out or not, but that's definitely something that you guys want to look into. And again, like I'm saying, once I have a chance to work with all these cameras, I'm gonna update the information on my website and all that stuff. But like right now, if you go, one of the links in my video, you'll see my kits, kind of recommended kits that I have on kit.com, and you'll see my number one most popular kit is the Indie Filmmaker. And like I said, if you're just starting out as an indie filmmaker, that's probably one of the kits that you kind of want to go into, or the gear that you want to look at. And I kind of listed, all stuff and why, and kind of describe here for each one of these items. But you'll see that this gear, none of it's great for indie filmmaker, but none of it really meets those standards that I just talked about, right? Whereas if I go and here I show you the other kit that I have is the Pro Filmmaker. I have also actually an indie filmmaker, but it's slightly different. But the Pro Filmmaker kit is it's definitely, I would say, the way to go. And again, it's using the Blackmagic Ursa Mini 4 camera, because again, this camera I think is just great for whether you want to do live broadcast work like I'm doing right now, or just the deliverables to like a TV station network, or if you want to switch it up and use it for doing film work and stuff like that. So you can definitely use that camera for all those options. So that's one of the reasons. Any other questions, Lucas?
Yeah, actually, so Bob Adams was kind of saying that the question about the SDI cables being 6 or 12 pin, saying that maybe it's the person was referring to 6G or 12G SDI cables. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
6G.
So
Yeah.
some of the SDI cables can carry basically more data, uh, and so basically 6G or 3G is basically just more information that can carry, and usually refers to higher resolution, higher bit rate, all that stuff. But it can also be, you can use that. That's the cool thing about like HDMI is sort of like the standard industry standard that was created so that it works on like basically all these consumer TVs and all that stuff. And so it's very restrictive, I would say, in a way, because it's like this protocol that how the information has to be sent and what information. So that again, when you plug in an HDMI cable, you're going to get that signal in your TV. Whereas SDI is kind of an open source, you could say. It just sends a certain amount of bandwidth or digital data, but that data can be encoded in many different ways. So that's why you can, for example, send certain these kind of special raw signals from cameras like the Sony Fs7 or Sony Fs5, and to, let's say, a recorder that can record that raw signal, but it might be in different things. Or you can, like I said, you can put, include timecode in it, or other information through it. That's kind of the reason why the SDI also is more. It just gives you more options of why it's been used by professionals in the industry. And there's cables again, yeah. They're going to be allow you to kind of basically different rates of data that you can transfer. Now the ones that I'm pretty much using is because the stuff that I'm using with SDI is usually just stuff that's in 1080p. Just kind of a simple signal that I'm sending out to, let's say right now, that I'm broadcasting on the internet, or if I'm sending it to a wireless monitor from let's say, a client to see, then because of that, you pretty much, as long as you get an SDI cable, it's going to work. If that's all you care about is getting, a 1080p signal, all of the SDI cables are going to do it. If you want to get into some of the really higher end stuff, 4K, RAW, all that stuff, then yeah, you want to make sure you're getting a cable that can transmit a certain, amount of data. And if you get that cable, it's going to be usually more money, but then that means it's obviously backwards compatible, so it's going to send in obviously less data too. So, any other questions?
Couple of quick questions. Maybe they'll be quick. Here from Coding Experiments, and so he's asking whether you've seen Dave Dugdale's video about 10-bit versus 8-bit versus 10-bit when shooting in 4K. What do you think about it? If you have seen it, basically, I guess the conclusion was that when there's higher resolution like 4K, you can get away with less bits. Like I'm guessing that's what was the conclusion of the video. Have you seen that video? Does it make sense to you that when shooting in 4K, you could get away with 8 bits instead of 10 bits?
No, I haven't seen that video, but I've seen similar videos, and I've done tests myself. And I'll tell you this: with the higher resolution you're shooting, like basically just more pixels, yes, you can get away with a lot of things. Like even if the codec isn't that great. Or let's say if you have a sensor that's not very good in low light, but you need to shoot in low light and getting a lot of noise. If you have lower resolution, then basically just those pixels are bigger, so that noise is more visible. With higher resolution, it's less visible, the noise. But at the end of the day, I would still say that it's okay for like basically when you're just looking at it. Like that's the difference between acquisition codecs or basically a format versus distribution. If you were to just shoot 10-bit on a camera, and let's say you're shooting, let's say 10-bit, 4K, all that stuff, but you have another camera that shoots 8-bit, 4K, and if you were just to show them straightforward, like just shoot whatever's in your camera, display that, and show it on a screen-by-screen kind of side by side to an audience, it will look identical to them. And that's where the problem is with a lot of these tests, is people just look at that footage and go like, oh, okay, or they'll do like some minor adjustments. The reason why you want to capture a lot more data than you're really going to be, like I said, a lot of the stuff people ingesting right now, or the way that they're watching video content, is on their freaking phones or tablets, or even if it's on their computer. And a lot of it is going to be, it's not going to be HDR, forget about it. It might be HD resolution, but who cares when the codec is really low? Like a lot of the codec is so compressed, even over the air, for example, HD signal is so heavily compressed that it's even worse quality than like in an H.2.4 codec. So the thing is that if you're recording in that and you're just going to display it right away, and then you record something that's a much higher codec, but then you have to basically downgrade it and display it in the same quality as the other camera shot, obviously the two are going to look identical. Where the difference comes is when you then start manipulating and changing that information. And some of it happens, when you're doing film work, it happens in post-production, so you have the time luxury to sit there and do it. But when you're doing live TV work, guess what? Your camera might be able to send a nice looking, 8-bit 420 signal. But again, sometimes what happens is the signal gets fed to, like let's say a video module or whatever. Now it's usually all done computerized, where they might be adjusting colors in real time, or they might be adding graphics on top of it, or things like that. And then they're going to be spitting out a video signal that's then compressed for ingestion for basically for the consumer, average consumer to view. And then that's when you're gonna start seeing some of these artifacts show up. And I would say the biggest thing is, like, when I was doing my filmmaking tutorial kind of tour around North America and Europe, I talked about it a lot. Was when for example, when you color grading, whether you're doing it in real time or doing it in post production, color grading at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're kind of zoning in or zooming in on certain colors or certain shades of color, while you're minimizing or zooming out or completely getting rid of certain other colors. So what happens is this: if you start off with an image that has certain amount of colors, let's say if there's, just for the sake of if somebody who watches on an average television or whatever, you're only going to be able to display 100 colors. Obviously it's way more than that, but let's say it's just 100 colors, and that's all that TV can display. And you have one camera that can record 100 colors. Those are like those consumer cameras. And then you have another camera that can record 1,000,000 colors. Well, if you just show them, both of them on the same TV, you're still seeing 100 colors from both of the cameras, right? The difference is this: you take the camera that shot originally 100 colors and you start manipulating those colors. So meaning, maybe you might take the red colors and make them really vibrant and strong, but then some of the blue and cooler colors, you might really minimize them, right? Well, now what's happening is you've taken the red colors, and there was only so many shades of those, and you're expanding and making them basically a lot more visible, and then you're putting it on that TV. Well, now you actually have less than 100 colors, because you started with 100 and you literally had to manipulate, throw out some other colors, and you expanding or zooming in on others. So you have less than 100 colors now displaying. Well, if you take a camera that shot 1,000,000 colors, you can go in and zoom in and all those colors and manipulate them, and then spit out that image, and it will look still beautiful on a 100 color display, basically. So that's kind of the difference between the two. So that's why a lot of these tests, and I haven't seen Dave Dugdale's test, maybe he doesn't make that mistake, but I know a lot of people have made that mistake, is they'll look at, like, oh yeah, I recorded with this camera that only costs $200, and this camera that records all this raw and everything, and I can't see a difference. It's like, well, yeah, because you're not going to see a difference, especially on an average display. It's only once you start manipulating and adjusting the images, that's where you're going to see a difference. So something to keep in mind.
Tom,
yeah.
Do you want to get to a couple of submissions?
Yes.
Video submissions?
Yeah, I believe we're getting late, so definitely going to do that. All right. So here, what do we have first? Let's see here.
James Clark, the one from James Clark. Are you going to play first?
Yeah, I believe so. Let me just make sure here that I have the. Or is it this video submission? James Clark. Okay, so this is you as a director, editor, colorist, producer, and all that good stuff. So let's make sure that I'm getting the link properly. And it says a short video of my trip to Eastern Sierras. All right, guys, enjoy this video. Alright, so apologies, but it seems like Vimeo, I guess, is screwing up. Alright. Very cool. I mean, a very simple video in terms of like the kind of, I guess, the shots and kind of more locked up, but nice use of the time lapse with some of the other kind of shots. So definitely cool. I do apologize for the stuttering. I don't know why it was. In general, I just usually have problems with Vimeo. That's why I would say if you guys submitting stuff, just best to send YouTube links. It's just a lot more stable. It seems that YouTube is. So my apologies for that. But otherwise, yeah.
Can you take off the overlay, the filmmaking times live?
Yeah, I can do that for sure. But yeah, so right now let me switch to the next submission here that we have. Well, I guess a quick feedback in case James, I guess, wants is I like the color grading. I like the use of basically the images with the music. I would say at the end there was kind of got a little repetitive towards the end because there was a lot of these similar shots with the time lapse, right? With the mountains there, or like where if you maybe introduce a slight camera move or things like that, it might break it up a little bit. But still, I would say for that length video it was good. If you wanted to do that, but like longer, then definitely you would be running into problems. But overall, like what you shot there was nicely shot. I think the colors were nice. So definitely makes me want to go see that area, which is I think if that was the point of the video. Then you've achieved it. Next submission we have is from Angelo Carciola, and it's YouTube link. Yes. He was the director photography, editor, color, and sound. And he says he's Angelo from Sicily in Italy, and it's a fake trailer of a TV series he's created for a famous, Italian TV series, Gomorrah. Okay, that's how.
Gomorrah. It's just Gomorrah.
Okay, I know.
You know from the Bible, Gomorrah. Okay.
Oh, okay. And shot it on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera and Canon EOS 60D, and he just wants to know what we think about it. So let's see it here. All right.
Aspetta. State quegli stronzi dei secondini alle tutte così. E a te che te ne frega di quello sto io? Quando ero nico mi piacevano assai i carditti su belli, sulle celluzze che cantano tutto i giorni a cantare, tutto i giorni. Non c'è manca niente però, c'hanno da mangiare, c'hanno da bere, stanno sole, la notte sta minza, non c'è manca niente, vanno a cantare, nessuno un canto. Non servono più, ma su scappano, moro.
Cool. I like it. I like how it was done, where it looks almost like those kind of, I would say, almost like kind of those early Quentin Tarantino films, where it's like indie kind of with the film grain and things like that. Very kind of realistic but kind of dark lighting, so I like that, and the sound design was good. I have no idea what they were saying. I only picked up a few words here and there, but if there were subtitles, maybe it would be helpful for us, those of us who don't speak Italian. But otherwise, yeah, nice work. So Angelo, congratulations, and just keep it up. And if it's I don't know how long it took you to shoot this and stuff, but you're saying it was like a fake movie trailer or a TV trailer, so I guess just keep at it, or maybe actually produce the actual series. So if you can, do we have time, Lucas? You think to show?
We can try one. We can try one more. Yeah, let's try one more because we started a little bit late. So
okay, so let's. This one is from Caitlin, I believe, and it's again different director photography, colorist, and editor. And he or she, I'm not even sure, said after going through, is it breakup and basically wanted to channel the emotions he was feeling in this short film. So it's always good to see when people use like the real experience, something happens in their life, and they use that as an inspiration, because that's where usually, not always, but it usually means that the stories are just kind of feel more real. People can kind of connect with them. So it's definitely a thing, and I think it's also just it's like literally good therapy. I think for us filmmakers or artists in general, is when you use things that like just sitting on your chest and you want to get it out there, but without going out there and screaming basically at random people, is you using your art to kind of talk about it and to connect with other people and see whether other people are going through similar things. So definitely it's good to see that kind of work being created here. So anyway, so let me switch it here so you guys can see it. Enjoy.
So many sounds I haven't heard, so many lips I haven't kissed, so many tears I haven't cried, and yet I feel I've missed out on nothing.
Oh, apologies. Let me play this again. I was wondering why is the music so loud? And at first I thought the music was part of it, but I guess there's music playing from something different here. Too many tabs open on my computer, so apologies again. And let me just rewind it. And I was like thinking, my first critique was going to be that the music is a little over the top, and that's the reason why. Anyways, watch it, enjoy it again. That's more like it.
There's so much I haven't seen, so many sounds I haven't heard, so many lips I haven't kissed, so many tears I haven't cried, and yet I feel I've missed out on nothing. What's the point? Why am I here? I can't quite seem to fathom any concrete answers. I can't place the broken pieces together. I can't quite make sense of it all. Nothing makes sense since you left. Why did you leave? I never thought this would happen. The intensity of first love tricking me into naivety. Kesh? It's me. I know you don't want to hear my voice right now, but I miss you. I really miss you. I'm so sorry. I love you. No one ever warns you how much it will hurt. Please don't move on. You were so beautiful, so kind, and I ruined that. I do things without thinking. The concept of consequence is steering clear from my decisions. I'm a walking paradox, because I destroyed the things I love. I remember that night, tears falling down your face, the shadows of the night floating all around the room. That was when I knew I'd finally broken you. I'm sorry I'm toxic, slowly but surely killing all around me. All I can do is drink, smoke, snort, whatever it takes to forget. But this heavy, painful nostalgia I have for you never fails to engulf me. I never fail to remember the way your kisses tasted, or the way your laugh echoed in my mind for days. Dreams are the worst. Waking up in a cold sweat, with tears in your eyes, bringing everything back to a time without pain, back to something better, someone better. Why can't I forget and move on? I'm drowning in the pain of this. There have been times recently in which I feel myself falling deeply and uncomfortably. I wish my mind would stop spinning. I just want silence. Our love was a flower. So you plant the bulb into the ground, and then you carefully begin to nurture it and care for it, and without fail it grows, accumulating more strength and power as this entity becomes more complicated and intricate, until one day one of the vital elements that the flower needs is missing, lost even, along the way, and all at once the flower begins to wilt. Then you reach the end, and all that remains is the dead remnants of what was once something truly beautiful.
Pretty crazy, kind of heavy topic, I guess, but well made. I like the use. It kind of had today I would almost say that it has this feel of like the submissions of like the early 90s kind of indie kind of cinema scene, where it kind of feels very like, you know, like when people start experimenting with video cameras or like the 16mm kind of film. So it definitely has that kind of look, and yeah, well done. I like the use of like just the editing, the music, the kind of, you know, how you're using it, basically kind of cropping in on the smaller image, and a lot of, even though the cinematography kind of again felt more like this kind of indie thing, it was still interesting in terms of like the different angles, the Dutch angle used, the colors, a lot of shadow and light. So I really like that. I think it was a very solid film. So I don't know, hopefully, Caitlin, you're submitting the film. I don't know if you are, or you already submitted it and you've shown it around, you know, in other places. I'm glad that you submitted it to our show. So definitely want to see more work like that from you guys. So send in your work. Again, for anybody else who wants to have your work featured on our show, the submission link is in the description of the video. And yeah, and we're gonna show it here on YouTube and on Facebook. So next week definitely we have more submissions, so we'll get through them. But getting back to this film, I think it's you know, it's good to use, like I said, those kind of personal experiences. And it's, you know, for anybody who's going through that, I mean, it's kind of, I guess, being aimed and from a perspective of somebody who's younger, a teenager going through their first big breakup. I'll just tell you, it gets a lot better. You know, I think all of us when we're younger and we're going through those first emotions and things, it can sometimes feel like it's the end of the world. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, if it was
it's just the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the beginning. Life is just starting. And if you take it all too seriously, like you have to kind of, at the end of the day, it might sound like I'm brushing it up, but you have to kind of laugh off, you know, all these, doesn't matter how horrible things happen, you think, in life, to you or other people, you kind of have to just, yeah, just realize that in the context of the whole world, it's nothing. Tiny little thing that happened, and your life is going to go on, and you're going to be able to look back.
You're going to be happy, and you'll be happy, and so on. It's like, yeah. I'm not saying, when I say it's just beginning, I don't mean it's just, you know, the pain is beginning. It's not like that. It's just like when you're young and you're learning all these experiences, like everything is so super intense. And then you know, when you get this later, you kind of just get the perspective. You kind of, you know, can see more things, how everything fits in, your emotions and so on. And you can still love, you know, very passionately later on in life, but it's not going to be so, you know, black and white. And so I guess, you'll be able to I guess experience. I don't know how to say that. It's difficult to wrap it all into one sentence or two, I guess. But there are good things to come. If you just stay positive.
Yeah, I guess I think what you said. Basically, it puts things into perspective as you experience more things in life, right?
Yeah.
That's really what's gonna happen. So that's why definitely for I don't know how many younger viewers we have, but if you are going to something similar like that, yeah, I think it's great to pick up a camera, express your things, show to the world what you're feeling, and I think it's gonna also, especially when you start showing your work and you're seeing other people respond to it, and if you go to film festivals or even on YouTube and you're seeing people respond, and you see that that it's not just you, that so many other people are going through it. That's where I think art can be great, right? Whether it's making films, music, painting, drawing, whatever it is, photography, because then you're kind of connecting and you're seeing that, hey, I'm not the only one going through these things. I'm not the only one feeling so horrible, and that makes it easier, first of all, and then lets you kind of experience more things in life. And once you get older, you're going to be like, you in perspective of everything else that you experience, you're going to be like, wow, like you'll remember it, like I said, but it's not going to completely stop your life or not going to end your life, and like in the case of the character in this film. So, but anyways, great work. Thank you for the submissions, guys. Again, fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this show. As always, the conversation continues especially on YouTube. For those of you who are watching on Facebook, if you want to be really involved with the chat and everything, always join us here. But also, once the video now basically gets published on our website and YouTube channel, then you can just always go in the comment section and let us know your thoughts, what you think, and I'm going to be again coming back to it over the next few days and responding to you guys so we can continue chatting. Let me know what other cameras you think or gear, or maybe whether you have suggestions or you think it might be something that it should be accepted now by professionals, or maybe something that you're wondering, is it good enough? Again, leave your comments there, questions, and your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's it. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.